skydiving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. My name is Dion Miller, and I will be your host today. Welcome back. We haven't seen you guys in a while. I had to put things on hold for a little bit so that we could do some catching up and make sure that we're doing things the way that they need to be done. We're always bound by other people's time. We like to catch people on their days off. We want them comfortable. Just like everything else in my life, it's done in God's time, which means it's always done right on time. So in my book today, I have Jeff Stevens, and I actually met Jeff on Facebook. There were several things that he had to say. He had actually put out a video. He had gone live, and is what I saw, and I felt a connection. And when I feel that connection, I ask, because I've been doing this long enough. I know when I've got somebody on my hands that is willing to speak, that is going to bring us a lot of hope and experience. So, Jeff, thank you for taking your time today and coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Dion, man. I'm honored to have been asked to be on the podcast. I have done similar things, but not quite on this standard.
Okay.
And so it's always a pleasure to be asked to share my story and be part of the recovery community, man. That's what I live for these days.
And the reason that I was asking you is you were going after some things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your education? We were talking about this a little bit before we came on the show, because you're still kind of a young guy. How old are you, Jeff?
I'll be 28 this year, so I'm still 27. Yeah,
good for you. He's still a young guy, man. But why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the stuff that you're going after right now? Let's let the audience know.
Okay, so I'll start with how I got to where I was going. I attend something called Recovery Cafe. They have them all over the world. The nearest one, other than we're in the only one in Oregon. But the nearest one to us is Seattle, where it all started. Okay. And they have circle leaders there that it's similar to an NA meeting, but each circle, you meet with them every week. So you gain that circle of trust. And I wanted to be a circle leader, but in order to do that, I had to have 2 years clean, and I had to attend a peer support class. Okay. So I went and I asked them about it, and they were like, yeah, man, how close are you to 2 years? I was like, my 2 years is like 3 days after the class gets over.
Nice.
And so they sent me to get my class. I went through the peer support class at Rogue Retreat, which is a local organization that offers it. And it was amazing. I learned more about myself, as well as like how I should be, or different ways to talk to people, like motivational interviewing, active listening, all sorts of different things that I plan to use in my future to help people that are in a position that I used to be in. Yeah. And that's one of my biggest goals. I actually just got hired on at the same company that gave the class as a job readiness specialist.
Congratulations, man.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at right now. I'm waiting to get my certification through the state, and my certification will put me on for a peer support specialist, and a certified recovery mentor. So I get to add those 3 letters to the back of my name, like I did something, because I did. That's
you did, yeah. Congrats. And what's neat about those classes, because I've been through them too. I'm a certified recovery coach. Of course, I was a counselor for a long time too, but it's neat because they taught you some skills that you can use in everyday life, even talking with your sponsees or to some guy on the bus, and what I like about it is they really teach you how to meet people where they are at. because I think
Exactly.
we get excited and we get caught up, and then we forget they're not where we're at. Okay. Now there's no difference between that person and me. We're all this close to the bottle, right? But now I can recognize that, and I can meet them where they're at, so that they don't feel like they're struggling to catch up to me.
Absolutely, man. And I found that those skills are useful with addicts. They're useful with just normal people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we all use the term normies.
Yeah.
And then I use them with my kid. He's 4. I just sit down and I listen to him, and I explain to him just kind of like that I'm listening, and that they're, and try to find out what he's actually after, and it works.
Yeah,
it works. It's so useful.
You know, it's funny, and not funny, but I think we should listen to it. There was a person in my recovery coach class that said she didn't appreciate being called a normie. And yeah, I know, I thought about that. I'm like, well, you'd be drunk. But a crackhead, you want a crackhead? You could go with that. You know, the thing is, you know, sometimes words are just words, and that's the way that it is. So, but how else are we going to differentiate? You know, because there is a difference in our brain makeup and the way that it works. Beyond that, yeah, we're all human. So, so why don't you tell us about yourself? Let's go back a little bit and get started with your story. Where did you grow up at, Jeff?
So as a kid, I was born in Hermiston, Oregon.
Okay.
I was there to my earliest memory. I think I was like just about 3. The guy who signed my biologicals walked out, and so we moved around a lot. And I'm trying to remember, because there's a lot of memories that as a kid you block out.
Absolutely.
We moved around a lot until my mom met the person that I call my dad. He stepped in when I was about 4, and even then we moved around constantly. But I spent the majority of my time growing up in two general areas, which is Hermiston, Oregon, and Wallowa County, which they're pretty similar. Wallowa County is just super small. Okay. And so that's how I grew up. It was mainly rural, and thank God I did, because like I was really heading to a point where I was gonna. I kind of did become a little punk for a little while. Not gonna lie there.
Yeah, I think we all kind of go through that punk stage. So somebody comes along and hits us upside the back of the head.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, like, how do I put this? I mean, we are gonna go into my story. I grew up with a lot of good memories.
Okay.
And there was a lot of good things in my life. Like I played sports in school. I grew up being active with my family, but so there was. Sorry, I stutter when I get into when I start to think about things.
Not a problem at all. That's just your mind trying to figure out what it's going to say next. So you take your time, Jeff. That's not a problem.
So when I was 8, we moved to Wallowa full time, and it was great because like I was around my dad's side of the family, and like I got to see my grandma constantly and all that side of the family. But I mean, there was an incident.
Okay.
I was like before my 9th birthday. I'm not gonna disclose who.
Okay.
But I mean, I was molested as a kid by an older family member.
Okay. And so it's somebody of trust.
And it was, and it's somebody and I didn't realize how wrong it was until I got older.
Sure.
Because I mean, it's an older somebody you look up to, somebody you're around.
You're 9. You're 9. You're still naive, man. Yeah, we didn't have internet back when you were 9 and a phone and everything else, so you could look things up. So we were naive.
These kind of things you weren't told about these kind of things until you were like in high school.
Yeah.
At the least, and I went to a little school, so they didn't address these things. Like I didn't
Okay.
And like I knew it was wrong as I got older, but it's something that stuck with me all through this. It's something that I've always wanted to forget, and it wasn't until recently that I addressed it. You know, I didn't address it with the person. Like I still, whenever I see his name come up on family posts, I'm like, okay, this is. I don't know how to do it because like when I was in my addiction, this was somebody that I wanted to target. This was somebody that
Sure it is. You know, the way that I would see it is this motherfucker made me this way. I'm gonna make his life hell. You bet your ass. I wouldn't, but that's how my thought process was back then too. You know, I was always blaming everybody else for who I was. You know,
exactly. Don't get me wrong. Like my addiction, because my addiction started with alcohol. It didn't. That's not where it stopped. But that's a good place where it started. I was 16 when I started drinking heavily.
All right.
And I was still in Wallowa County because we moved back and forth from Hermiston like 4 times since then. But it came easy because I was good at sports. Okay. And so with that lifestyle, being good at sports on the weekends, you're out partying and drinking. But and my mom will tell you this to this day. I was 16 when I had alcohol poisoning for the first time. Like I ended up laying in bed just pissed drunk. Yeah. Just puking and like choking on my own.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, and it happened more times than I can count. And I probably did a lot of damage to my liver. By the time I was 21, man, I was drinking a case and a fifth. And I'd already experimented with things like pills, and pills were big when I was going through high school. And then until then, I took a hiatus from pills, but I was still constantly drinking. Okay. So I ended up graduating. I graduated high school a year late, but I got my diploma.
Wow. Okay.
So I was supposed to play in like the All-Star games, which kind of fed into my view of myself. Okay. But I didn't. I went to Alaska and was working up there on a boat.
Okay. What were you playing? Because people are going to want it. I know it's silly, but what were you playing? Were you playing football?
Oh, I was a 3-sport athlete, man.
3-sport? Oh, okay. All right.
That's football, baseball, and wrestling.
Yeah. Okay.
So
good for you,
I tried not to be, but I look back and like realized that there were I wasn't always a bad dude growing up, but at the same time, like I had this view on life that I was raised in and I was brought up and around. And something I should probably mention is like I had the first time I ever had pills is when I blew out my knee in high school.
Okay. So they were prescribed?
I completely blew my ACL.
Okay.
Yeah, they were prescribed, and it was real easy because like at the time I was like, okay, my knee hurts. Can I have my pills, please?
Yeah.
And it was real easy. Like even after that effect, I'd just be like, hey, so can I go get checked out? And it was right there.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they give pills out nowadays is just something crazy.
Yeah. Well, thankfully that's changing. A lot of doctors now, if you want a benzo or something, and there's any inkling of addiction in your background, you're gonna have to jump through some hoops to get to them. Now, thank God.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, most of the time, if you're in recovery, I've noticed, like personally. Whenever I go to the doctor, I'm like, hey, so here's the thing. I want nothing to do with painkillers, if absolutely. I have too clean.
Sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. So we're going to go back in the story just a little bit. Jeff, you are back on, brother.
Yeah, so where I left off was I had blown my ACL, and like I was saying, it's super easy to get pills. And after an injury like that, it wasn't hard for me to go into the doctors and be like, so my knee's hurting, and they would just immediately prescribe me like Percocet or Vicodin. And I was 16, man. Yeah. So like mixing like perks and alcohol growing up, it was bad. Yeah. But so I mean, I went through high school and like the rest of my high school pretty much doing that. And then I started hanging out with all the stoners because I thought they were cool. Dude, they were chill. I never really liked weed, but so I was fine around them. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I didn't smoke it, because I did.
Yeah. It just wasn't.
But it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. And after high school, after I came back from Alaska, I got back into the party lifestyle, and it went on for a year or so.
Everyone, all right, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. We have switched devices, and sounds a lot better now. So we were, Jeff, I believe we were talking about the doctor.
Yeah, we'll try this again. Let's see how this goes.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I was 16 years old. I blew my knee out in wrestling, which for me was a big deal. But after I did, and after I had my surgery, they put me on painkillers, so Vicodin and Percocet. And I mean, it was nice not having to feel the pain. You know, growing up, it was rub some dirt on it and get up and keep going. And that's what those pills were: rub some dirt on it and keep going. But anytime after that, it was super easy to get access to it. Like I would just complain about my knee pretty much, and they'd give it to me.
Yeah.
You know, I was 16, and mixing that with alcohol just made it all the worse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's a hard thing. So that's pretty much how the rest of my high school went. You know, graduated high school, I started hanging out with the stoners because they were they were very relaxed, very, very open, very cool. It was nice hanging out with them. Sure. They smoked a lot of weed. I was always fine around weed. It wasn't really my thing. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I hadn't tried it. I was good. I liked it, but not enough to want to smoke it all the time. It was great. But that wasn't what was for me. So I graduated high school. I went to Alaska to work up there on a boat. And when I came back, the party lifestyle kind of continued.
Okay.
It got out of hand. I still remember the first night I ever did coke, because coke showed up at a party, and I was just like, yeah, why not?
Okay.
I was going through a hard time at the time, and it seemed like it was one of those bucket moments.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My life's full of those, by the way. And I remember it. I remember the drip. I remember the taste. I remember the smell. I remember everything about it. I remember exactly what we put it on.
Okay.
It was just a little black piece of a welder's mask, like the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what was for me, uppers. Within a month of starting cocaine, I had almost entirely just lost myself in it.
Okay.
And I was in a small town where it was hard to find. So when we didn't have the money and we couldn't find it, somebody showed up with methamphetamine.
Oh, shit.
And I knew what it was in my head, because I was like, does anybody have any white? And he's like, no, but I have clear. And in my head, I was playing dumb. I was trying to play dumb to myself.
Yeah.
I was like, it must just be a different type of cocaine. You know, trying to rationalize it in my head. Like, it's so dumb.
You're a smart guy, though. You knew better, didn't you?
I knew, and I absolutely did. And I knew exactly what I was putting up my nose. And I tried to make it. And as it got, I entirely stopped looking for cocaine, and I started looking for meth.
Okay.
I was trying to keep putting it up my nose because that was any better. And then someone's like, no, you got to try and smoke it. And it took about, I don't know, 2 tries of me trying to tell them I didn't want to put it on my nose. So then like, well, we're not going to waste it. Yeah. And I was like, cool, give me the pipe. From then on, I was fucking hooked, bro. Yeah. That's all I wanted. It's all I wanted to do. And it started out like this. Like, I was working at a ranch in Enterprise, Oregon.
Okay.
And I would work on the ranch all day, and then right afterwards, I'd get some money. I'd go to my dope dude's house.
Yeah.
And we'd stay up till 7 in the fucking morning.
Yep.
Just hanging out, which was it was a nice little ritual. That became my ritual.
Yeah.
Go to work, go hang out until it stopped.
Yeah.
Until that was all I wanted to do. I was sitting out on the fucking tractor out in the middle of the field smoking a fucking meth pipe.
Yeah.
I mean, and it happens so fast that as a kid in the DARE program, when they tell you it happens so fast, you don't know until you do it. and it's something I would never hope for anybody, because man, I went from having all of my own things, like I had my own rig, I had my own tools, I had all this stuff that I built up growing up through school.
Sure.
And let me point out that when I started using meth, I quit drinking almost instantly.
I hear that a lot, actually. Yeah.
I stopped going to the bar. I stopped going out to parties. So
was it more isolation than it really was quitting drinking? Because you're smoking meth by yourself on a tractor in the middle of the day already.
Well, see, and the only time I smoked by myself is when I was working, because I loved being around other people. When I was smoking meth, I loved it, and it wasn't until later in my addiction that I realized when I was smoking by myself, and it was far into my addiction, that that's when I started looking at where my life had gone. I just, I started looking at myself. I was like, damn. And it was like 3 years after that I ever even stopped.
Okay.
But not to jump too far ahead, I ended up leaving that ranch. And honestly, I'm pretty happy I did, no matter what the circumstances, because the guy that was running the ranch was my uncle. Ended up getting caught up for trying to solicit a 14-year-old boy. Yeah. It's always nice to be around people, to find out you're around people on a daily basis that are, in my opinion, worthless.
Yeah.
Fucking useless.
Well, and, we tend to put ourselves in dangerous situations, sometimes without even knowing it, but we still do it. We don't listen to our gut. But that's what drugs and alcohol does to us, is it puts us in situations we normally wouldn't be in.
Yeah. Well, so this guy had been a family friend for years. Called him my Uncle John.
Okay.
For years. No one ever would have suspected. He was an openly gay man, which was fine. I have no problems with people, whatever their sexual orientation, because whatever you want to do, it's whatever makes you happy. But until it becomes something like that, then at that point, I have hopes and aspirations for what happens to him in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate to put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah. So after I left the ranch, gradually I ended up couch surfing. I ended up back in Hermiston, actually, is what happened. I left there and I was there for probably 8 months, and then cocaine came back into my life, and I was growing massive amounts of weed, because we were doing what we called a mission, and we were running it across state lines, and we ended up in Arkansas.
Okay.
And got connected with some big people down there for MS-13.
Oh, wow.
We were selling them massive quantities of weed, and they were giving us massive amounts of coke at the same time.
Yeah. And
we were down there just living the party lifestyle. It was great until it wasn't. Those are some people I tell you what, I ain't ever been so put on edge by a little Mexican dude.
Yeah, MS-13, you don't mess around with them.
No. They're about their shit.
Yeah, and they are.
I mean, that was one of the first times I ever had a gun put in my face, because the guy's like, "Hey, you want to do some coke?" And because we'd been hooked up through somebody else, and I was like, maybe when we figure this out. And he's like, he fucking pulls out this massive 44, just go, you're gonna do some coke. And I was like, line it up.
Yeah. What else can you really do? I mean, he wanted to make sure you weren't a cop.
Exactly, and I understood that. I just, at the same time, I was trying to do business with a clear head.
Yeah.
But so we ended up being down there for a week. We ended up coming back, and things just started falling apart on who I was around. And when it happened, my mom and dad had now moved to Heppner, which is a small town on the outskirts of town. Okay. And so I ended up moving back in with my mom and my dad for a while. And then that's when I realized that my mother was using methamphetamine. And so she had this little kind of circle going, trying to run dope, and I became part of it. And that's when things got really bad for my family. I was smoking dope with my mom.
Okay.
Trying to hide it from my sisters.
Okay.
And by the way, let me tell you, I absolutely adore my sisters, and I always have. I spent a lot of time in high school raising them.
Yeah.
And it ended up coming out one night, and my mom and dad had a massive split.
Okay.
And that's when they ended up breaking up for good.
Okay.
Almost 20 years since they got together. So I was about 24 at the time.
Okay.
My mom dove deeper into her addiction just as I did, and we were in a Walmart parking lot one day, and I got out of the car. We were both just geetered, and I told her that I wouldn't be around her anymore, and I started trying to go different avenues to get my drugs, and my mom and me both deteriorated.
Yeah.
So we split up for the better part of 2 years. I wouldn't have anything to do with her, and to be honest, I feel kind of guilty about that nowadays.
Okay.
So I ended up hanging out a lot more with two of my cousins who had more dope than I did, you know.
Okay.
One of my cousins, he kind of took me in a little bit and showed me how things ran. And he ended up running most of the dope in the town. He ended up getting raided eventually.
Okay.
And so I was at that point, I was in the point where I was homeless, and I was either trying to bounce around on a couch, or on my lower days, I was sleeping in a bush. I was sleeping out in the middle of a field next to a Walmart parking lot where somebody on a good one had dug this massive hole.
Yeah.
That right there is about the time where I started looking at my life, because I was sitting in a hole in the middle of a bunch of sand surrounded by bushes, smoking meth, so I didn't have to fall asleep in this hole.
Yeah.
I mean, there were another time where I was sitting underneath a semi-trailer out back of a church that had been helping me with clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sick that day, and I just laying there on the ground, just laying flat on my back, and I couldn't move to the point to get away to puke. So I just turned my head and just puked all over down next to me.
Okay.
My life I didn't quit for almost a year after that, and I didn't know why. I couldn't, I knew that I was getting fed up with it, but I felt like the lifestyle could come back, and it couldn't, because I tell you right now, and I'll tell you the same thing I tell everybody else.
Okay.
I was always chasing that initial high.
Yeah.
My ritual of being around and having just a good, normal conversation, listening to music, being in a circle of people, I was always chasing that, but it ended up becoming stealing, robbing, fighting, just all this shit that I didn't want it to come into. And I don't want to glorify it, because there were times where I felt like an absolute badass.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
I was a punk, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when we were talking earlier that we were punks. That's what we were talking about. When you're running around, I'm a badass, and don't mess with me. You don't want to see me get angry, and all that. I'm a man. And now these are all facades that we tell ourselves to justify the stupid shit we did.
Yeah, and tell you what, man, it was stupid. I can't get over it. I look at my life and I think of all of that as my lowest point. Okay. Because it truly is.
Yeah.
And I want to explain that since that point, I have come so far. And it started when I went to my little sister's graduation. It's the first time I got to see my baby sister in years. Since my family split up.
All right.
And I tried to get as nice as I could with what I had. And I thought I looked all right. I had these baggy jeans and a fucking button up and a t-shirt and put this goofy ass hat on. And I went to this graduation and I got to see my older brother Hunter, which I hadn't seen in forever. And he's actually we're up in Salem right now going to see him.
Oh, awesome.
After all this. And I get there and like I get to watch my baby sister get her diploma. I get to watch all this. And we go to the graduation party down at the Grange Hall and just get to talking and get to talk to my dad and my older brother, my younger brother, all of my siblings are there. And my older brother and his wife offered me a spot to live.
Oh.
And they said, if you want to get clean, you come live with us.
Yep.
And it took about all of 3 seconds to be like, all right, let's go.
Wow.
So it was about another week. And my first oldest sister said she'd come pick me up on this day. Well, that night, I got high one last time. And then I went back to her house and I couldn't sleep.
Okay.
And I still feel guilty about that because like I knew I was going to get clean and I still went and got high one more time. Like, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I ended up living there for like 3 months. And I mean, I was still drinking.
Okay.
But I wasn't using drugs. And then I was there and my mind wasn't quite right still. Like I still couldn't, I tried to get a job. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't navigate the public bus system. Like up in Salem, I couldn't figure it out. And it's such a simple concept that I was still in that mindset of still trying to put my life together.
Yeah.
And so it didn't work out. And so me and my brother had come to sort of an impasse, like not confrontational, but I ended up moving down to Medford.
Okay.
Within a week, I went to my first NA meeting. I got to pick up my first chip for not using.
Wow.
Because why not? You know, I was there. The people I was around were involved in NA. I got involved in Oxford, which is, I don't know if you know what Oxford is.
Absolutely. Oxford, so our listeners know, is Oxford is for people. They have a lot of different stuff, but sober livings for people that don't have any money. So homeless and things like that. They help with grants. They help with continued education. I'm a big fan of Oxford House. So
yeah, so I got into an Oxford House and was attending NA meetings, and I got a job. And let me tell you, I held down this same job for the past about 2.5 years almost. And that's the first time I've done that in forever.
Yeah.
And so going through all that, I have attended NA on a regular basis up until recently. I started investing more time into Recovery Cafe because that's where I'm spending my recovery time.
Okay.
And now now I have my own circle there. I'm leading a men's group, nice, as well as attending another circle.
Yeah.
And through my recovery, this past 2 years and some odd days, I have, man, my life in so long and so short of a time, my life has gained so many good things, and I am so blessed today.
Yeah.
That it's wild to think that my life went down so fast and came up even faster.
It's amazing.
I have this experience that is the lowest point of my life that I am now going to be able to use as lived experience to help others that are in that same position.
Yeah.
And that's wild to me, man. Like, I remember using with people that had used for 30, 40, 50 years, you know, different drugs, 20 years. And it's like, you really, and I can't understand why, like, I can understand getting into it, but I can't understand why continuing that. Yeah. And it's so hard because I mean, I was that guy that wants to save everybody when I had nothing to help with. Yeah. Yeah. And so now that I have those opportunities to be able to give back, that's exactly what I want to do. I want my work to be about giving back. I want the fact that I want someone to be able to spend some of my free time by giving back. I want to be able to share this with the lady that I just proposed to, that's over here staring at me all goofy. And She's wonderful, by the way. She's an Oxford alum as well, and so I've got
Wow.
lucky to
Let's do a
find
round of
somebody.
applause for the fiance too.
Yeah,
Heck
she's
yeah.
amazing. She's got more clean time than I do, and she's one of the biggest things that that made an impression on me, because when we first met, I didn't have a year clean.
Okay.
So she told me we would only be friends until then, and the whole reason why was because of the fact that she wanted me to be able to make sure that I had that first year of my recovery to focus on me, and that made a huge impression on me.
It sure should. That means that somebody actually loves you.
Yeah,
That means that they care. That they, and that for us, it can be mind-boggling in the beginning. How would somebody care about me that much? Why? Because we just don't think that we're worth it. No, my wife is Al-Anon, but when I was drinking, she used to tell me, Dion, I'm gonna love you till you learn to love yourself. She was my girlfriend when I got sober the first time, so she knew what I was like sober, and she would tell me, Dion, I know what you're like sober, and I'm not leaving until I get that back. Very, more stubborn than me, and it worked though. It worked. It was amazing. Yeah. And now I know how to love myself, which means that I have a lot of love to give away now. It's fantastic. You guys have a daughter too, don't you?
No, we have a son. His name's Atticus.
Thank you.
He's the man. He's the goofiest little kid, and I love him to death. Like he's so smart, and he's got so much attitude that and I hate to put it this way, but it's almost annoying because he's got that much attitude to him. He's got his mom's attitude for sure.
Okay. Oh, that's hilarious.
And so I just want to point something out. It's like I've got all this connection with family now, and growing up, family was a big deal to me. Like I said previously, I raised my little sister for a time when I was younger. And so in my addiction, that's the one thing I miss the most, is that I had pretty much thrown every bit of my family tie away for a drug. And that sucked, because when I first saw my sister after 3 years at her graduation party, I started bawling, because I felt like I might have a chance again, and I did. But like what crushed me is when I seen her last, she had this little lisp, and she was this goofy little girl, and I got to see her again, and she was like 12, and she was pretty much a teenager, and like it broke my heart, because like I threw all that time away.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, how do you spend so much time with a little kid that looks up to you, and just be like, this is more important?
Yeah,
and it's not. Like, it's hard, because I get a little emotional, because today I'm so blessed, and now I talk to them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
My amazing fiance tried to surprise me with my 2 years by bringing all my family down, but little did she know that I found out about the surprise, and that's when I proposed to her. But like I've got all these people that care about me, and that I can show and express my love to, because they're there, and I make the right choices today, and I put the things that matter first.
Yeah.
And it's wild, Dion. Like I still revel in the fact that this is my life today, but I need to stop and understand that I worked for my life today.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, it's a blessing, but it's a lot of work, and it's 100% worth it, man. It's 1,000% over it.
I've been sick most of the week. I can tell you now, it's still better than any freaking hangover I ever had. Even my worst day sober is still, better than my best day drunk, man.
Dude, absolutely.
And I actually get to be a part of life now. Before, when we were talking about your story, it kind of reminded me of how when I was drinking, that time always escaped me. I would turn around and, another month had gone by, and it would always happen so fast. Wait a minute, I was supposed to quit drinking a month ago. What happened to me? And then we hit that psychic change when we decide, I don't want to sit in a dirt hole smoking meth anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that is such, it's either that feeling or the laying on the ground, puking off to the side of me because I was so sick that I couldn't get up to move myself. Are you shitting me, man?
Yeah.
Like instead of working and sleeping in a bed, I chose to use and sleep under a fucking semi truck. Are you shitting me?
And we made those choices, and but did we? We didn't though. We were,
it's an
being ruled by
man.
Yeah. It's hard to explain when you're not when you're not an addict or an alcoholic. It's hard to explain.
It really is. Like it's so difficult because a lot of people don't understand. There are people that can use drugs recreationally, and then there are people that use that one time and it's everything to them. And that's the addict mentality. I was listening to somebody else talk about it the other day, and we're wired differently because the minute it hits our system, minute, man, it's all we care about.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And we want it to be part of every aspect of our life and everything we do and anything we feel. And we want it to cover the way we feel, because if we feel like shit, we're going to go use to make sure we feel better, or that we don't pay attention to the fact that we feel like shit.
Yeah. Well, it's like I finally found the answer to my problems, and that's how you feel. It's a sense of relief. And we will look for that relief the rest of our lives. We will chase it to the freaking grave, unless we find a sufficient substitute, man. So thank God for that sufficient substitute.
Yeah. It's what, did my camera turn off, by the way?
It did.
Oh, give me a second.
It's all right. I thought you were picking your nose or something, so I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I mean, and it's wild because it's just it's that thought process of like something good we want to surround ourselves with, when it's really not something good, and it's a giant mask.
Yeah.
Like those masquerades dances, the people wear the mask. That's what we wear to live our life. And it's probably not a great analogy, but I mean, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And once we get into recovery, we can take that mask off. I needed that mask, or I wouldn't have been able to look at myself in the mirror. No way.
Absolutely, man.
No. Jeffrey, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today, man. You got a beautiful life, man. You guys don't get to see the camera, but his eyes are shining. You're a good-looking young dude, man. Good on you.
Stop it.
Get out of here. I sobered up at 19 also, and I don't really like to get into good on you young people, good for you. You didn't have to go through what I went through. That is it's bullshit. Okay, maybe you didn't lose a car, maybe you didn't go lose a wife, but man, I ended up on the streets too, and I would be drinking and be like, well, Dion, I thought you were quit drinking when you were drinking under a bridge. I'm at that bridge. When I get to that bridge, then it's bad enough. But it would just never seem to be enough.
And it never truly is until you hit your lowest point.
Yeah. And what's fantastic about that is that's up to you. I think a lot of people, and that's why I actually love young people in AA, because you guys are the ones that are going to be able to break a generational cycle, and good for you guys, man. And I think this new generation understands feelings a little bit better than the older generation does. Sorry, boomers. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm scot-free. Nobody picks on me. We invented the internet, so screw all of you. And everything 80s. But, that's why I like having different types of people on is, AA's not just full of old men sitting around all crotchety. There are a plethora of young people in recovery that have a great time living a great life and spending time together, man. What was the name of the cafe to get people interested in that?
It's called Recovery Cafe.
Recovery Cafe.
And if you're anywhere, if anybody that listens to this is in Oregon or around the Medford area, there's a building called Reclaiming Lives in downtown Medford, and it's run by a couple of people that are. So I'll put it this way: the people that started the Recovery Cafe down here are normies. They're a rare breed of people that see addicts as people and still love and care for them the same as they would anybody else. And they're amazing.
Yeah.
And they actually run their own podcast. I'm not sure what it's called because I haven't been diligent enough to listen to it. But it's amazing, man. It's called Recovery Cafe. They have them all over the country. Like I said, we're the only one in Oregon, though.
Yeah. We don't have any. I haven't heard of them in Colorado yet. And honestly, we need some because a lot of people are putting in sober bars here. And I am so against that. Why we
sober
have
bars?
Yeah. So we have 3 detoxes in Colorado. We have 4 sober bars. So you tell me what's wrong with Colorado.
What?
Yeah.
Dude, is it, do they have is it like a coffee bar?
No, they serve mocktails and non-alcoholic beer, which, by the way, non-alcoholic beer has beer in it. It has alcohol in it.
Yeah.
It does.
So, dude, that is, okay, personal opinion here.
Yeah,
that is asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Because
serving mocktails. Yeah,
it's chasing that same thing you're not getting, and it's gonna make. I feel like it would just make you want it more. Like,
well, isn't that just trying to relive the past?
Yeah, you're putting yourself in the same situation where it's gonna make you feel those same old feelings. Which sometimes feeling your feelings is good, but I don't feel like that's one of them.
No, it's not. So where are you guys going after, No. I mean, I get it. Getting together for fellowship, for camaraderie, to work with each other. Hey, I am all about that, but not at a bar.
Bro, go bowling.
Even if it's a sober bar.
Go that's one of the things we do for fun is we go bowling. We go down to the family fun center. We go we got a raft out trip going. We have a barbecue. Like there's so many different things you can do without going and paying for an overpriced mocktail to make you feel like you're in a bar.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I didn't drink alcohol and do drugs for the taste. I did it for the effect.
Exactly.
So if my mind is sitting there holding a beer, sooner or later, it's going to want the effect. It's going to want it.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Because you're chasing that same thing. And when you're not getting it, you're going to chase the real thing.
So, you know what? I may even reach out to those people. If you find out who they are, let me know. And I'll reach out to them and see what we could do about getting them here, man. Because that'd be the way that I work is I don't, like when it comes to stigma, I don't fight stigma because you can't. You got to either come into agreement with it or educate. Once you start arguing, it's all said and done. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take time to thank you for having me on the show, by the way, because it's been, I've very much enjoyed this conversation, that's being able to tell my story, being able to talk with you. Like, it's a pleasure and an honor to have been asked, you know what I mean? Like I know that there's thousands of people that with stories that can benefit others. And I mean, I've seen on your guys' website, it's a testimony of their experience. It's wild, man.
It is, and the reason it works so well is because God's the one that takes care of it. I mean, you saw how much I prepared. Now we actually do prepare, but it's all back end stuff.
Yeah.
But essentially it feels more like just sitting down and having a talk with your friend, man.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely,
I
man.
think that's what it should be about. And that's how real feelings come out, and we could talk about real emotional things. So, and thank you for taking your time. I know that you guys are doing some traveling and stuff, and you kind of fit me in. We had our times off, things like, but see how it still all fell together exactly the way it was supposed to. So we were two drunks. Number one, we were off with our and addicts, right? People that don't know anything. We were off on our time. We had delays. We had technical difficulties, and we still able to do it.
Absolutely, man. And
with no problem.
It's being able to adjust to things that come at you in life, and those are skills that you develop. Because I tell you what, man, like if this would have happened, like in my addiction, like if there'd have been one thing after the other, bro, I'd have been upset. I'd have been like, fuck this. I'm like, it's not.
I would have been too. It didn't work the way I want, exactly the way I wanted to. I don't want it.
Exactly. If it didn't
what a
fit
life, man.
My exact fucking parameters, I would be upset. I would be fucking just off the wall, like a 4-year-old throwing a tantrum. I would have been doing the same thing my kid does on a daily basis.
Absolutely. All right, Jeff. Well, thank you very much for taking your time today. This was a lot of fun, man. This was a great talk.
Absolutely.
And you are always welcome to come back and, if you have a topic or you want to expand on something, then absolutely feel free to come back on. You and I can talk about it.
Absolutely, Dion. I'd love that sometime. All
right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today we've had Jeffrey Stevens. What a fantastic talk, guys. Drugs and alcohol don't care who you are. They don't care how old you are. They don't care what you look like. They don't care what race, religion, or sex you are. They don't care about your orientation. And neither do we. I love every single one of you for exactly who you are. And I hope you know that. Peace out and have a day.